clearly signaled that he is going to be one of those players throughout Grandmasters that is going to have his own ideas, right? And is going to try and gain edges in the lineup construction. Because a lot of players, especially in Europe, do stick to the mantra of bring the best decks, tech them for the mirror, outplay people, right? Which is valid. However, everyone else is doing that same thing. So unless you are incredibly confident that you are in the top percentile of people in whatever tournament you're playing by some distance, that strategy isn't necessarily going to be consistent. So the idea of just, straight up outplaying people can't come down to it. You have to get some kind of edge in lineup. And I think Leta has shown by doing things like Miracle Priest and now trying to bring a counter deck with the Token Druid instead, that he's willing to try and take those lineup advantages while still being a fantastic player in his own right. But I'm talking about lots of things that could theoretically matter, Raven. I want to talk about what actually matters in this game of Hearthstone.
Yeah, let's dive straight in. Just a reminder, the winner continues on to tomorrow. The loser of this game will be done for this week and barely scrape any points. But look at the opening hands. Incanters, check. Deck of Lunacy, depending on where you fall on the matchup, check for Bozzzton here. But Leta does have the Fungal Fortunes at the top as well. So he does have that ability that you're really looking for Token Druid to not necessarily pop off on turn one, but to know you can make some very large boards quite easily in the mid-game.
Bozzzton does decide just to rip the flow first here. Obviously, that's a matter of debate when you have the Lunacy in your hand as to what you want to go for. I do kind of like it this way around when you're up against Token Druid, because you have the ability not only to get the big old Libram of Hopes, which obviously everyone talks about. Your 7 mana cards all become Libram of Hope at that point if you do it this way around. You also inflate the number of board clears that you can find, like picking up 7 mana cards. You get like Cycle of Hatred, for example. Which can just absolutely nuke Druid. There's also the possibility that Bozzzton might just not be playing Deck of Lunacy at this point and just going through it normally. But either way, I do like the Incanter's flow on.
Yeah, and that's why I like it too, is because, well, depending on what Leta does, he might not necessarily want to Lunacy, right? It's definitely not a given. So he is choosing to go for it now. And I think that is because, okay, I've seen my opponent had the Fungal Fortune, so he's got a ton of resources in hand. I am going to face these big wide boards in these kind of powerful 1-2 punch turns. So Bozzzton needs something from deck to help out. Whereas if this was a bit more, say, a Gibbling opening, then he would probably hold off to just use some of the removal tools he's got.
With that said, it is going to be a Gibbling opening. It's just going to come down a turn later than maybe expected. Bozzzton here does have the Devolving Missiles if large buffs land, but he doesn't currently have a way to actually address the board. Cannot get a Raz out of the Font of Power just yet, even if he were to hit it with the 0 mana font. So he's going to be found a little bit wanting here. There is the chance for the Reckless Apprentice, though, I think is the right name of the card, but Soul of the Forest obviously makes a huge mess of that.
Yeah, there's a Libram of Hope, but this play is very nice from Leta. Going for the Soul of the Forest means that, okay, Devolving Missiles, let's pretend it hits 3 separate minions. Well, there's more where that came from, and those minions still exist as 1/1s, right? So they still have to be dealt with. Leta's not really put any buffs down, except arguably the Soul of the Forest, so no actual damage buffs yet. So anything that survives could then be buffed and push a ton of damage. And Bozzzton, quite frankly, is in a rough spot here. Where do you even start? Does he have to go for fun and see what happens?
I mean, yeah, he needs some kind of high roll, but it's just a matter of what that high roll is. So, for example, if you were to get, like, Font into the Reckless Apprentice and just drop that, leave a bunch of 2/2s on the board, sure, that gives you potential to die, but you could at least then top deck an AoE on the next turn. Cycle of Hatred, Flame Strike, discounted to the point that you would actually be able to play it since they're Deck of Lunacy versions. I'm not sure what, like, gradually picking this board apart piece by piece is going to achieve. Is there one card you can top deck from this point that gets you out of this, even with Deck of Lunacy considered? I'm not really sure there is.
No, I don't think so. Bozzzton is playing the... I've just forgot the name of the card. He is playing One Shooting Star. I'm not saying One Shooting Star would deal with the board, but it would help with this board before it's buffed. So he is playing one of those ones in his core list, but for now, Leta's just going to keep on going with the resources. Doesn't have anything to build up a wide board yet, but there's Pride's Fury already, and there's Power of the Wild. You like trading off a Murloc or a Demon here and keep the 2/2s?
I do, yeah. It's not like you have any difficulty filling that last board spot next turn anyway, right? With your buff turn, since you have the Muscle Cub in hand, and I think this just plays around something better off the top, like, you know, like Cycle of Hatred, like Flame Strike, like Soul Mirror, so on.
I don't think there's anything for Leta to really do with this Innovate this turn. Again, the only 1-cost card is that Cub. So he could replace it now, but I think the Innovate's probably worth just holding on to, right? Doesn't need that extra 1/1 on the board.
I think Leta stopped and thought that hard about whether there was actually any punish for just pushing the 1 in that spot. Like, that's how desperate he is for damage.
Kind of a funny card for Bozzzton to top deck. Nothing can stop us. Well, it's not true.
Okay.
There's Hellfire.
There's Hellfire. He can devolve again, try and hit a couple of the middle ones. Potentially rack up a full clear.
Is there any... Probably not. With the amount of cards drawn, I think Bozzzton has to expect buffs next turn. So I was thinking whether he could be greedy and, like, evolve and then ping this turn, and then go for Hellfire afterwards, but...
Okay.
Yeah, I think with the amount of cards Leta's drawn, you know there are buffs coming down.
Yes.
Oh, pick your poison at this point, Leta. Can go for the Thorns just to create an extra 2 minions, only 2 mana, and then can go for Prides. Could Innovate out the Cub, maybe that's enough, or he could try and go wider and assume, because Bozzzton had to draw something off the top there to clear it, that Bozzzton doesn't have any more clear now.
Yeah, it's one of those points where you have to assess just what you do know about your opponent's hand. So we can reverse engineer it by actually knowing what the cards are, which obviously makes life easier. But Leta knows that Bozzzton has a mage card at full cost on the left-hand side of his hand, then 2 mage minions, then a discounted mage card, then 3 random lunacy spells, right? So he has that much information about the hand. So he knows, for example, a natural flame strike from the deck could not be played this turn unless it was exactly that 4th card, right? The 1 discounted mage card in the hand.
Right.
Trying to play around lunacy is the clue is in the name. It's lunacy. You can kind of forget about it most of the time unless you are down to almost the last few cards in the deck and you've kind of kept track of everything and you can narrow down the mana costs that accurately. So I think just having eliminated how few mage cards there are in the hand, you do just want to make as big and aggressive a board as you possibly can, which is largely what Leta has done here. If there's no AoE, he has lethal set up with the Pride's Fury and so on the following turn. So
yeah, and I like it too because it holds the Pride's Fury, which is the most annoying card to play that turn because it just reduces your board size down, even though it adds a lot of health. But like you said, it's very unlikely that Bozzzton is going to be able to mask this turn as well, so the health on the minions is fine. So I like this overall Malevolent Strike. Going to be able to take 1 minion off the board. Going to open up the Skull of Gul'dan here for Bozzzton. And this is where things could go really wild.
Yeah, I like this as well. He had the opportunity to go just Libram of Hope that turn, but I love him just trying to take the high roll here instead, just looking, digging for something game-winning off the draw there. Not it. That's pretty great, sure.
And all these lifesteal minions as well.
Yeah, lifesteal minions are insane here.
And the buff
as well. Yep. Get cards out your hand, keep dropping things, play as many minions as you can for 3 mana here, and then buff everything. 1 thief even, wow.
Oh, is it a bit too late to play it? I don't think so, no. Oh, did it just auto-pick?
I guess he's miles ahead of us on animations, yeah. I was gonna say, like, playing the 1 thief there might be a mistake because it locks you out, right? It locks you out from playing the buff until you see the cards appear on your screen and you can pick one. But obviously Bozzzton was a few seconds ahead of us. We just had some lag on animations and he had plenty of time, so nicely done.
So I believe that's just 10 with all the buffs, 11 with hero power. So Leta gonna go fishing.
No Solar's in hand right now, which does reduce his potential damage output by a lot, even if he were to hit the big boys.
does have the Lunas, though, so he can clear off most of these, especially with that Bog Beam, as in the lifesteal minions.
Yep.
Which are the real threat here. I think Leta can afford to have his minions traded as long as it's not the lifesteal minions that, you know, smash in and put Bozzzton back onto full health.
Time waits for no one.
You think Bozzdton's just about getting away with this?
He's just about there, right? It feels like this is the turn that really turned the corner. And it was a good turn from Bozzzton as well. I think a lot of people there would have just said, okay, I get to kill a minion, heal for a bunch, and play a big Divine Shield taunt. That seems very powerful. But Bozzzton recognized that the contents of his deck are potentially even more powerful than that and went for a straight-up game-winning turn. And I would honestly say this is fairly low percentile in terms of the powerful things he was capable of doing that turn with the Skull of Gul'dan discount.
Leta buffed everything though, chucked as much damage face as he could, left only one 3/3 with lifesteal on the board. So again, from his point of view, okay, he gains 3 health. I can make that up, no problem, right? We can see maybe this is the turn for the Libram of Hope.
Struggling to see a better option this time around, yeah. Don't think Potion of Illusion is going to get any work done here.
Only if he had no cards in the deck and he could get the Neru Fireblade.
True.
I concede.
Oh wow, and
Okay.
just like that, yeah. He knows Leta with his hand. Yes, he had the glow flies, but he did not have the hand size to, you know, actually create more than one, I think. So yeah, wow, Bozzzton dug himself out of that one in a pretty impressive fashion, because I'll tell you quite, you know, right now and quite honestly, I would have played Libram of Hope, then I probably would have ended up in the same position the turn after, but maybe with a bit more health, but with still no way to clear the board. So I think Bozzzton I agree with you, had a really good call there.
Yeah, I really, really liked it. I was fully prepared for the Libram of Hope to come down and then me to complain about how I didn't think that was the play. But no, Bozzzton saw it and just cleared out his hand. I think obviously drawing a 0-mana card there with the Malevolent Strike that was also very useful on that turn was huge, because that then cleared out the right-hand side outcast for the Skull, which was massive. But I think it was a great spot to recognize that his deck was capable of doing much, much more powerful things than just jamming an 8/8 Divine Shield Taunt heal for 8 for 6 mana, as weird as that sounds.
And I'd say the letdown for Leta, even though he'd got a ton of card draw, he drew, what, 0 Arbor Ups and 0 Solars, which is, well, they're the 2 cards that win you games. So he just didn't quite have the front-loaded power to end the game fast enough, right? So it was a little bit of a rough one there, but Bozzzton getting ready to go into game number 2, and maybe the last game for the day, if he can finish this up in a reasonably quick fashion. And I do believe Leta has switched to his secondary, so 1 less Soul of the Forest and plus 1 of Guidance. Oh,
There is that Guidance in the opening hand. We saw just some of the gross little tricks that you can do with resizing pouch in APAC, I believe, whereas Leta instead going for that Guidance. But we can see some of the abilities that has as well, just to be able to refuel. It kind of functions as a pseudo card drawer, I guess, in a lot of spots, just giving you those extra resources you need. And I think Druid, this version of Druid, I think is one of the best equipped decks at just taking turns off, so Overload doesn't really matter, right? Like, they're very happy to go all in with like Lightning Bloom and Guidance for Overload as well, and then just skip a turn, just to be able to set up for something powerful some powerful thing to do on the following.
Yeah, if anything, they normally do 2.5 turns worth of stuff anyway in 1 turn, so why not? Here, though, Incanter's Flow on 2, subtle. Not looking too bad here for Bozzzton as he goes 2 for 2 in that sense.
Both. Yep. Easy both.
And this is looking like the other side of Druid, right? As opposed to going off with Gibberlin. This is looking to be a Glowfly game from Leta, at least as the opener.
Yeah, completely agree. I think there was the option there to only take 1 and then give yourself the opportunity to Vate Glowfly on the following turn, which now obviously you can't do because of the Overload. But I think the combination of those 2 cards are just way too powerful, right?
Penflinger, go! Really awkward resizing pouch, because one of the best things about pouch in Druid is that the 0 costs are actually so good.
Yes.
But Leta ending up just taking a 1 cost there.
Yes, and I actually like the play we saw in APAC as well. I alluded to it at the start, where it was like super early. It was like double Lightning Bloom into Resizing Pouch and just played like an Alar as a 5-drop against Mage, which I thought was pretty sick.
So now Leta has double Glowfly. Pretty nice, even if there is some kind of board destruction effect from Bozzzton.
Mini Mage, kind of filthy here.
I actually really like Aegwin.
There is a valid option here as well, for sure, yeah.
Just because of Shooting Star in hand, right? He can Aegwin Brain Freeze this turn, and then just have a 5/5 against Druid with Shooting Star.
That's true, yeah, you have the Brain Freeze as well. I wasn't factoring in the 0-mana Brain Freeze, because my issue with taking the Aegwin there was obviously you play it into the 2/2, and then if they have Luna as part of their turn, then you're very, very sad on the other side. But the fact you had 0-mana Brain Freeze as well, I actually think that's a good spot, and maybe Aegwin was better.
Yeah, and it almost always 2-for-1s against Druid, right? Unless there's a crazy Arbor up turn.
Yeah, but I think Bozzzton's thinking, and I think, honestly, after much consideration, I agree with him, is that the expectation is Glowfly, right? And I think that's a fairly clear read from the way that it's been played from Leta on the other side. So since you have Shooting Star, the extra spell damage you get from Aegwin doesn't really matter that much. So now you have the opportunity to just like have the persistent spell damage totem, essentially, that you get from Mini Mage instead. So maybe this is just slightly better overall. I think it's a really, really close choice.
Yeah, I also just like the Aegwin card, so that's probably leans into why I personally in my game would have picked it. But yeah, it basically does the same thing this turn, right? Really nice clear though, the ping there, just being able to kill off the wolf. And Leta back to square one. Well, I guess square two, right? Because he has Glowfly Swarm again to set up and say, okay, Bozzzton, nice clear, try that one again.
14 health on board. Oh, that's huge. Okay, so you can go coin, actually spend the 1-mana Brain Freeze here, and then play the Spring Water and still be able to mask at the end of that, which will clear up a huge amount, especially since that preserves the 0-mana Brain Freeze that you'd actually have to use this turn if you didn't draw Refreshing Spring Water. Refreshing Spring Water is a good card, Raven. I don't know if you've noticed.
I have seen it be good once or twice, yes.
You can also go coin Devolving Missiles and then Spring Water Mask, because Devolving Missiles takes a similar amount of health off the board as the Brain Freeze does.
I was going to say, what if you do what you suggested initially, but just use both Brain Freeze?
What if you just play Spring Water first for some reason I don't understand, and then just draw Flame Strike? Yeah.
I mean, you got me. You got me good, Sol. You got me good.
Yeah. Best line.
Now just play Spring Water again. Who knows what you're gonna get next time?
Mana's overrated.
Okay, so Leta has lost both Glowflies. He does have the Fungal, but what's the plan from this point? So, like, what does Leta actually need to do now to win this game?
So first off, this is a great spot from Leta. I love that he's doing this first. He's picking less off this 2-mana card because he wants Gibbling specifically. He missed, but he didn't lead out with Fungal Fortunes, right? Because what's Fungal Fortunes going to draw him? Not Gibbling. That's not how the card works. And that's basically what he needs at this point, right? Because he needs a way to board in a can. He has all the buffs, all the tools, but no way just to actually start making minions right now. So I love that he started out with the Guess the Wait, now having to resort instead to Fungal Fortunes.
Well, let's see what he's going to get. That's 1 spell. That's 2. And that's 3. Okay. And also, I think it's sometimes a bit easy to forget that Arbor Up is kind of a board in a can to an extent, especially if it's soloed, which is a big deal. It's not like it only buffs minions like Power of the Wild. Like, it does create them as well. So even a solar Arbor Up could be enough to make Leta stick something on the board.
Yes, I do think it has to be Solar Arbor, though, specifically. Like,
yes.
one Arbor Up is not a board that, like, an 8-card mage with Flow Cast is going to have any issue in dealing with whatsoever.
Right.
But I don't think this was enough from Leta this turn. I think Bozzzton just has free reign to just do whatever he wants this turn. And I think he's going to take full advantage. He should have a fairly insurmountable position by the end of this turn, I would imagine.
Oh, and it comes off the back of him actually getting exactly that flame strike, because it's allowed Bozzzton to retain double brain freeze, the devolving missiles, right? He's not had to use any of that removal, even the mass.
Nice.
And you man
I
it.
respect it. Yeah.
Gonna hold on to the zero cost.
Yeah. So Solar Arbor is available this turn. Say this is it. This is my last board. I don't think he's going to have much chance to come back from this point if this board gets dealt with. Yep, Leta recognizing as well that this board has to stick, so you might as well take the value trades when they're available.
Mm-hmm. So Combustion, double brain freeze, all of these empowered by that +1 spell damage, which, you know, again, as another positive from not picking Aegwin, is still there, because Aegwin would be dead by now.
So I think you lead Mask here, right? Because Mask will almost certainly just create you some insane combustion breakpoint somewhere. Right? Like, what are the odds that one of these minions isn't alive with just 1 or 2 health, right? And then combustion can just go nuts and clear up.
What if he just doesn't? And then,
like, what does that mean?
Well, okay. What about like combustion on the
Yeah.
6/4 next to the
Yeah.
5/1, and
Yep.
then just go like brain freeze, which will kill off everything but 1.
And then
Right.
you can just mask and get face damage.
Yeah, and then mask afterwards. Yeah,
Yeah, you might be right. You might be right.
because this could, although it's likely to leave you with a good combustion, it also could have gone weird, right? Like there is still that chance.
Right.
Either way, Bozzzton, especially with these 2 brain freeze, still has plenty of ways to clean this up.
I think you're right, actually. I think if he was willing to dump everything... Yeah, problem is, that would be dumping everything, right? Like, it might just be that that play is just too greedy for face damage, and then if, like, Gibbling or Solar Arbor number 2 comes down, or, like, Solar Thorn Growth or something, then you just don't have any board clears anymore because you've spent everything at that point, right?
It's
You've spent
true,
all
but
your brain freezes, all your combustions.
They can't refill the board if they're dead, Sol.
Yes, but you also don't have finishing damage.
I know. I'm
Right, is
joking.
the problem. So pushing like 7 or 8 more damage here doesn't really matter if you can't also then clear the next board.
Yeah. Oh, just off here for Leta to like Solar and then...
No.
Oh, because that's a big deal. That's another like weird way this game could go now, right? If you just got Solar Scenarium Ward next turn. I've lost plenty of games to that one play alone, regardless of what's gone on in the rest of the game.
Yeah. Turns out this mini mage has been a pretty clutch pick as well. Obviously, we debated it quite heavily at the time, but it did come down narrowly in favour of the mini mage. I think it's borne out that way, right? That this has just ended up being just so much extra long-term value.
Agree.
Oh, that's what you want to see. Nice, cheap, efficient minions.
And one maker go digging for some, probably going to be more AoE is what Bozzzton will be fishing for. Maybe a second Flame Strike would make him feel extremely comfortable.
Yeah, he might even be tempted just to pick up like Fireballs and a Pexis Blast.
Well, there's a Rune Orb.
Offered them. Yeah, Rune Orb will do.
I wonder where he's going, like where his mindset is for the rest of this game, because for me, he goes 2 ways, right? He either tries to clear and goes as aggressive as possible, or he can just go ring toss, build up the secrets, and say, actually, Leta, you're just never going to win.
Oh no! Okay. Oh,
I'm disappointed.
There was a potential disaster scenario, and I wouldn't necessarily blame Bozzzton for just that, like we said, Rune Orb the face, pick up Fireballs. You think you can get there, right? It just so happens that exactly Solar Cenarian is going to shut that down on the other side. So Bozzzton manages to avoid the trap, pick up a very, very nice board clear in the form of the Cone of Cold, and I think just even all things considered, right, it's just the best play. Like, you clear the board, you're miles ahead on board, you have minions yourself, you'll get the lethal part of the game done later.
Yeah, and you know, outside of some niche outcomes like we're about to see, that you've more or less dealt with everything, right? There isn't much more to even kill. So once you've killed that, Druid just has to concede.
Is that right, by the way? Isn't it almost always better, or potentially always better, to just lead with a lightning bloom?
The void is filled with many whispers.
Oh, well, those are extremes.
Because if the lightning bloom works, sure, you've wasted a lightning bloom, right? And that sucks. But you still have the Luna, which can kill a 1/3, which is kind of important. Well, I mean, it's obviously extremely important when you roll an 8/1 off your Cenarian Horde, but yeah, tough.
I wonder.
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it?
Nicely done. Leta just basically taking a guess there between Oasis and Rigged Fair Game, and I think correctly predicting that Rigged Fair Game would be the more likely of the two to be chosen. So plays around Rigged Fair Game by attacking face instead of attacking the minion. Actually, I guess he plays around both by doing it that way. But ends up being Rigged Fair Game on is the secret chosen from Bozzzton. So nicely done from Leta, picking up that extra bit of face damage.
Yep. Here again, the holding of these brain freezes all game is going to pay off now as the spot removal for that one minion Leta's kind of relying on.
Problem, though, now for Bozzzton is that if he does not hit card draw sometime soon, this game has suddenly become losable. Because Leta can just continue to poke the face with the hero power every turn, right? And shut that down.
A small part of me, we didn't have time because the turn kind of just flew by, but I think Rigged Fair Game was offered, and because of the removal that Bozzzton had, I didn't know whether it was worth thinking about, because Druid never really just hits you in the face in the same turn they play cards, right?
He has Rigged Fair Game equipped right now.
Oh, I thought you said it was Oasis.
No.
Oh, apologies.
He has Rigged Fair Game, so I'm saying the attack from Leta played around it really nicely. It played around both, but it is Rigged Fair Game.
Right, sorry, I misunderstood. My bad.
And as I was saying, Leta can just hero power and deny that every turn now, right? If he really, really wants to. It's unlikely he's going to be spending 10 mana a turn from this point.
Or is he? Scenario War. Oh, Bozzzton's running out of juice.
He is. His hero power's going to go face here as well.
Oh, yeah. I've just done this before. Double Pride Fury. There's also, although might not have an impact in any way, having the Iron Beak Owl just to get rid of something annoying could be pretty clutch too.
Right.
Evolving's kind of weird here, where it's not really got good or bad targets. It's just how many different things it hits. It defines how good it is.
This is a bizarre game of Hearthstone, Raven.
Well, yes. On one hand, I could have seen Leta actually have already lost this game by this point quite easily because of the sheer shutdown in the early game from Bozzzton. But again, if Bozzzton didn't have quite that clear this turn,
yeah,
he could have been easily out of it, because look at double Pride's Fury next turn. What does Bozzzton do with no cards in hand?
Here's the problem.
Yes.
Where does the board come from? There is one Gibberling, but not enough cards in hand right now to actually generate a huge Gibberling board.
Gibberling, Pride, go.
Yeah, exactly. So currently, there's just not really a way for Leta to get back on board. Like, he has so much health that theoretically he could, like, fatigue Bozzzton in this position, right? But he's not in any kind of spot to do that because A, he's deeper in his deck, and B, at some point Bozzzton's just going to draw, like, a Pexis Blast, right? And that one minion will just run the game from that point onwards because it'll be unkillable.
It was also a weird scenario where, for example, there was a 3-1 on the board, right? Leta can't really kill it because if he doesn't hero power face, then Bozzzton wins the game, basically. So it was just like, okay, well then he's just going to get charged down by these 3 little minions on the board, so therefore he won't win fatigue. So it was a kind of a checkmate scenario there, but you are right. That was a very odd game of Hearthstone, Sottle. A good one, but an odd one.
Yeah, very, very strange. And so far, it seems the Token Druid experiment over here in Europe has been met with middling success, I guess. Leta made it to broadcast. He did win a series, but not the absolute monstrous performances that we are seeing from it over in APAC so far. We are yet to become one with the trees over here.
And Mage, though, on the other hand, continuing, I guess, to prove why at least a large portion of the European player base here is just bringing Mage, because yes, you have some worse matchups, you have some great matchups, but what the deck is capable of sometimes makes you able to overpower anything. Because for me, I would not like to run into this matchup as Mage, but you do have tools available to you to help. So Bozzzton getting a very, very strong